scam that would have taken money out of our underfunded schools and given it to wealthy parents who already have their kids in private school. Now those billionaires are introducing that same voucher scam at the federal level and gutting the Department of Education. So we need a food fighter values for our constituents in the halls of power in Washington, D.C. I think we need a teacher in the United States Senate.
Ms. Crockett.
And when I look at my track record, the track record is in this moment. It's about the fierce urgency of now. We are living in a time that many of us have never seen in this country and honestly never thought that we would see. And so I think that as we see a record number of retirements on the federal level from both the Democrats and Republicans, that boils down to people not being able to fight in this particular environment. I think that I've evidenced that. In fact, James and I served in the state house together. He's actually been elected longer than I have been elected, yet he's not as known right now because I have engaged in these fights and they have been right there on the front lines where people could see me out front. I think that because of, I didn't get my 50, my bad.
Moving on, we're going to stick with you, Ms. Crockett. We have a follow-up question when it comes to electability. What's the political risk that you are willing to take that you feel like your opponent would not take in order to win the U.S. Senate seat?
I think that I will do the edgy things, the things that the political consultants will never tell you to do. Because right now, people are hurting. This isn't about games. It's not about politics as usual. It's not about who sounds as clean as possible. It is about tapping into the rawness of this moment. I have been to Minneapolis and heard the stories of the people on the ground as they are being accosted. And obviously, we've got killings that are going on. And now we have the DOJ that has decided that they want to prosecute the wife of Renee Good. I have been there in California after David Huerta of SEIU had been incarcerated by ICE. And I listened to his story and met with him because we went there. I have been to Chicago. I am here to tell you that I am not just sitting in DC, I am getting out into the streets. And right now, to be perfectly honest, if we're gonna win and keep our country, we're gonna need somebody who can file bills, but also knows how to be a street fighter. And so that is my response.
Mr. Talarico, same question, 30 seconds. What's the political risk that you are willing to take that you feel your opponent would not?
Here's the risk I'm willing to take. Congresswoman Crockett and I are on the same team. I think we've already seen in this debate that there's going to be a temptation by the media to pit us against each other. But we are all focused on the same goal, which is winning in November and stopping a Senator Ken Paxton. And so I'm thinking just in this debate, you're going to see that Congresswoman Crockett and I agree on a whole lot more than we disagree on. And that unity is a threat to the billionaires who want to pit us all against each other and who right now are running this country, running this economy. And we need someone who has stood up to those billionaires in our nation's capital.
We want to move to the topic of immigration enforcement now. As many of you know, there was a deadly shooting involving federal immigration officers today in Minneapolis.
The House this week approved a spending bill that included funding for ICE. Ms. Crockett, you voted against the bill Thursday. Can you explain your opposition and tell us whether you support the idea of defunding or abolishing ICE? You have 60 seconds.
I absolutely voted against this bill. There was no way I was going to continue to pump a historic amount of money into this rogue organization that is going out and is violating people's rights every single day on American cities. I was just not going to do it. At the end of the day, right now, I think that we need to clean house from top to bottom. I ended up signing on to impeachment of Kristi Noem, as well as I call her Cruel Kristi. I signed on to that, but I don't even know. Here's my big issue. Right now, we have an administration all throughout that is deciding, yes, these are the laws, but we're just going to ignore them. They are not following the law. So why are we rewarding bad behavior? And that's basically what it is. This is the 5th highest funded military force in the entire world. And what are they doing? They're killing people in the middle of the street. They decided to execute a mother of 3 in broad daylight. I don't understand how we are sitting here and acting like this is normal. The only reason trying to be respectful of the time.
do want to ask you though, would you support abolishing or defunding?
We absolutely have to clean house. Whatever that looks like, I am willing to do it. Because if there are truly Proud Boys that are currently in ICE, that's a problem.
All right, thank you. Mr. Talarico, how would you vote on ICE funding measures? And do you believe ICE should be abolished or defunded? You have 60 seconds.
ICE shot a mother in the face. ICE kidnapped a 5-year-old boy. ICE executed a man in broad daylight on our streets just this morning. It's time to tear down this secret police force and replace it with an agency that actually is going to focus on public safety. We need to impeach Kristi Noem. We need to prosecute agents who've abused their power. We have to haul these masked men before Congress so the world can see their faces. We should be cracking down on the cartels, not our communities. We should be prosecuting gang members, not small business owners. We should be hunting down human traffickers, not moms and babies. We need comprehensive immigration reform in this country. We need to remake this broken immigration system in our own image. And once we win a Senate majority, we will do exactly that.
Just to be clear though, would you, in 10 seconds, abolish or defund ICE?
We have seen this historic increase in funding for ICE. That money has come out of our healthcare. So what I would say is that we should take that money back and put it in our communities where it belongs.
Staying on the topic of ICE with a follow-up question, Mr. Talarico, you'll have 30 seconds for this. One comment that you have made is that ICE should crack down on cartels. So what does cracking down on cartels look like to you?
So we have a law enforcement agency that is going after American citizens, that's going after our neighbors, including our undocumented neighbors. There was a mom and dad up in DFW, the Vargases. They own a dry cleaners. They've had it for 20 years. They're beloved by their customers, by their community members. They raised a daughter who is now attending Texas Tech University. On their way back from Tech, after dropping her off, they were detained by ICE. If our law enforcement officials are going after the Vargases, that means they're not going after the cartels or rapists or murderers. And so I think whatever we think on this issue, we should have law enforcement focused on public safety.
Ms. Crockett, a follow-up question for you. This week, you proposed the Track ICE Act,
Yes.
which would require immigration-related flight data be released within 72 hours. Explain how this transparency would affect the way ICE operates. You have 30 seconds.
I've had too many people call my office and not know where their loved ones are. I have too many people that don't know whether or not they are safe. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know that we can ever say that you're going to be right here in Texas at the Dilley facility. We know that they just found that there was a detainee that had been killed. They ruled that it was a homicide. That is the same facility that they took that precious 5-year-old to. I plan to go and conduct oversight at on Wednesday with one of my colleagues. The sad part is that if I conduct oversight, I have to look at somebody like
Who support deporting undocumented immigrants. You have 30 seconds.
So my family is from the border. My mom grew up in Laredo, Texas. I feel like Texans understand this issue of immigration more so than people in other states because we live with it, both the benefits and the challenges. So what I've said is that our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front and a lock on the door. We can welcome immigrants who want to live the American dream. We can build a pathway to citizenship for those neighbors who have been here, making us richer and stronger, and we can keep out people who mean to do us harm.
Right, well, this debate is being hosted by the Texas AFL-CIO, and some of their union members have some pre-recorded questions for the candidates.
We start with one from Calvin Mackey, first business agent for International Longshoremen's Association, Local 24 in Houston. Here's the question.
As a longshoreman, I've seen firsthand how artificial intelligence and automation driven by corporate interests has resulted in job losses. If elected, what will you prioritize at the federal level to ensure workers have a voice in artificial intelligence implementation and are protected from unfair uses of artificial intelligence?
Mr. Talarico, and I believe Mr. Mackey is here in the crowd. How would you prioritize the federal level to ensure workers have a voice in AI implementation and from unfair uses of AI? You have 60 seconds.
Well, when I was a public school teacher, I was a member of my local teachers union, the San Antonio Alliance. Shout out to the Alliance. And now that I'm a state lawmaker, I'm a proud member of the Texas State Employees Union. And I'm proud to say that in the Texas legislature, I have a 100% pro-worker voting record from the AFL-CIO. You've had my back when I was a worker in the classroom, and I've had your back as a legislator. And that includes when it comes to AI. In the US Senate, we have to have a senator who's going to take on this problem, who's going to stop AI surveillance in the workplace, who's going to make sure that AI is not making hiring or promotion decisions, that there's a human check on those decisions, and ensuring that AI is improving jobs, not replacing them. This scale of innovation we have not seen in this country. And right now it's being done in purely private hands by a handful of billionaires for their own profit. We need the public sector, we need the US Senate to get in this fight, to develop a regulatory framework that will protect workers during this new AI era.
Thank you. Ms. Crockett, same question. What would you prioritize at the federal level to ensure workers have a voice in AI implementation and are protected from unfair uses of AI? You have 60 seconds.
Thank you so much. So I currently serve in the AI caucus, and so we've been talking about a lot of things. In fact, there's a bill specifically as it relates to AI, not on the job side of it, that AOC has recently introduced, and this is around some of the dangers of AI. I think that number one, we have to confront the dangers and make sure that there are real parameters and limitations on it just from a general standpoint. Number two, as we look to our communities, we are going to absolutely have to protect our communities from these AI data centers that are being built everywhere. And we can go into that a little bit later, I'm sure, as we talk about some environmental stuff. And number three, as it relates to innovation, we have a Department of Education in which they are trying to basically defund at this moment. They are trying to limit our ability to get the skills and training that we need. And so we've got to make sure that we stay ahead of the curve and not behind the curve. Listen, we're standing in Austin right now. This is where CHIPS began. My predecessor actually was the one that did the CHIPS and Science Act. And so we know that there is a place for workers for sure when it comes to innovation. But the idea that you can only have one or the other is wrong. And so we have to make sure that we are protecting workers every step of the way to make sure that they are not being replaced by automation.
Ms. Crockett, let's stick with you and let's talk about the data centers in this follow-up question. Texas is becoming a hub for AI data centers, which can drive up water demand and utility bills. So how do you ensure that Texans get the benefits of AI without paying higher costs for water and electricity? You have 30 seconds for this.
Yeah, it's not even just the higher costs. Those are actual issues that we're going to have to deal with, but it's also the supply. Right now, we're dealing with the fact that there's a winter storm right here in the state of Texas. We don't know if our grid is going to hold up. And we're talking about these data centers that are actually pulling on us even more. So what we've got to do is, again, make sure that we put a framework around these, but we also have to work not just on the federal level. We have to work at every single level of government with our state and our city and our county levels, because we're going to need some zoning put into place. We're going to make sure, right now, I'm working with one of my cities on a similar issue. We have to make sure that we protect the people that live in these communities first from these dangers. The final point that I'll make about the water, it's not just that they're taking our water, it's that they're polluting our water.
Mr. Talarico, 30 seconds for the same follow-up question. How do you ensure that Texans get the benefits of artificial intelligence without paying higher costs for electricity and water?
I mentioned in my opening statement that I've traveled every corner of this state. I was up in Amarillo, Texas, for a town hall, and I stayed to the very end, meeting with every single member of the community. I can't tell you how many times I heard about the data center being built in Amarillo, and it was done without the consent of the community. And so in the US Senate, I will fight to make sure that these AI companies pay for their own energy and they don't pass it along to consumers. And I'll make sure that we work on sustainable water infrastructure, because Texas is running out of water and these data centers are exacerbating that problem. And so we should tax these companies, we should tax these technologies to pay for that kind of infrastructure.
Let's go ahead and switch topics now. In our polling, Texans, like many people across the country, say that the economy is their #1 concern. So with that in mind, we would like to ask your position on a few economic issues.
Mr. Talarico, are you in favor of increasing taxes on billionaires?
Absolutely.
So is there an income level you would consider raising taxes to pay for needed services? You have
I absolutely
60
think
seconds.
that I absolutely think that billionaires need to pay their fair share in taxes. Right now, 3 men own as much wealth as the entire middle class: Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos. Elon Musk is about to become the world's first trillionaire. He's about to make more money than every single elementary school teacher in America combined. Do we really think that one man is worth more than every elementary school teacher? These billionaires aren't just buying yachts and jets, they are buying power. Our schools are being defunded so billionaires can get another tax break. Our healthcare premiums are going through the roof so billionaires can get another tax break. Our Social Security benefits, our Medicare benefits are constantly under threat so billionaires can get yet another tax break. So we need a US senator, we need a Senate majority that's going to fight to make sure these billionaires pay their fair share, and also raise the corporate tax rate to make sure these giant corporations are paying their fair share as well.
So is there an income level that you would consider like in 2017?
I am very open to this discussion, but what I will not compromise on is making sure that these billionaires pay for all that they've gotten from this country. They have benefited from our infrastructure. They've benefited from our schools. They've benefited from our workers, and now they're not putting anything back in. That has to end.
Thank you. Ms. Crockett, same question. Are you in favor of increasing taxes on billionaires? And if so, at what income level? You have 60 seconds.
Absolutely. We absolutely need to increase the tax rate. And frankly, I voted against the big ugly bill, specifically because it was all about giving these extraordinary tax breaks while at the same time defunding Medicaid and Medicare to the tune of almost $1 trillion that has been pulled out of the healthcare ecosystem. And even when they pulled that money out of the healthcare ecosystem, unfortunately, it still was not enough to satisfy all the goodies that they gave over to the billionaires. So do we have a framework of how to do this? We absolutely do. The last time that we balanced the budget was when Clinton was in office. And so I think that we need to just go ahead and do what we know works. We need to go back to the tax rates that were in place when Clinton was in office, and we were able to balance our budget while also being able to have people that had access to food, access to education, and to healthcare.
All right, thank you.
A follow-up on the economy now. Affordability is another big concern. Ms. Crockett, in 30 seconds, what is one policy that you would prioritize to bring down costs for Texans?
If I had to go with just one, it would be tariffs. And we have to roll back these tariffs. Right now, we know that our farmers and ranchers are filing record-breaking bankruptcies in this moment because of the trade policies. We know that when we look at the Port of Houston, that is presenting a problem for them. We know that Texas is actually the top exporting state in the entire country. We also know that our small businesses are shuttering their doors, as well as even some of these larger corporations that are employing a lot of folk that are sitting here specifically because of the tariffs. I was just in Amarillo with Tyson workers right now, and right now, they are shutting a plant, or they are actually relieving 1,700 people of their jobs because of these tariffs, in which we don't have our ranchers being satisfied.
All right.
You
Thank you. Mr. Talarico, a follow-up for you. Would you support a universal basic income for all Americans? You have 30 seconds.
I'm very encouraged by some of the results from pilot programs of universal basic incomes. I was born to a single mom who worked overall to provide for me. I was a teacher who was underworked, or overworked, I should say, and underpaid. And I know what it means to carry the weight of student debt and medical debt. It's why I have fought so hard in the Texas legislature to take on special interests and lower costs. Again, back to my point, look at our records. I've passed bills to lower the cost of prescription drugs. I've passed bills to lower the cost of childcare. I've passed bills to lower the cost of housing. That's what we need to do at the federal level in the US Senate.
Ms. Crockett, same question for you. Would you support a universal basic income for all Americans? You have 30 seconds.
So again, there's plenty of studies that are still out there, but right now I'm a proud co-sponsor of raising the wage. At the end of the day, the one thing that I hear from most people is that they are frustrated because all of their costs are going up, but their wages are going nowhere. And so I think that if we address that first and foremost, I think that a lot of the inequities and a lot of the harm that is being inflicted on Texans and frankly everyone in this country, they would start to feel some relief. At the same time that all costs are going up, wages are stagnant, and we know that the corporate bosses are experiencing record bonuses that they are being paid by their corporations.
Before we move on, let me go back to Mr. Talarico. So if we can get an answer to a question, what's one policy that you would prioritize to bring down costs for Texans?
I'll actually give you a few. So I agree with Congressman Crockett. If we're going to lower costs at the grocery store, we got to repeal the Trump tariffs. But if we're going to lower the cost of healthcare, we've got to put caps on more life-saving drugs and bring down those prices. And to reduce the cost of childcare, we got to finally provide universal early childhood education to every single child in this country. Last one, to lower the cost of housing, we should ban Wall Street from gobbling up our housing stock in this country.
All right, thank you. We want to go to another question for both candidates from a union member.
Cheryl Eliano comes to us from Killeen. She is the District 10 National Vice President of the American Federation of Government Employees. Here's her question.
The past year has brought a lot of uncertainty to federal workers, many losing their jobs due to the executive orders barring collective bargaining. If elected, what 3 things would you do to support federal employees?
All right, Ms. Crockett, we'll begin with you. Ms. Eliano asks, what 3 things would you do to support federal employees? You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, so shout out to AFGE and all that you've done. As a member of the Oversight Committee, we definitely were fighting hard against this collective bargaining issues that this administration decided to usher in. So number one, as it relates to the executive orders, we have partnered with different organizations that were filing lawsuits because most people don't realize that we as members of Congress can't bring the lawsuits ourselves. So we've partnered with organizations to make sure that we could get your stories out there and get some folk as plaintiffs to sue this administration. And thankfully, organizations like Democracy Forward have been very successful. You know, we know that there were a lot of people that were told, wait a minute, you're kicked off the rolls. And then ultimately what happened is, well, they had to be brought back because of court order. There at least is one branch of government that has not necessarily fallen apart. Number 2, we need to make sure that we actually instill laws that are the exact opposite of the executive orders. The biggest issue that we have right now, though, is even when we are writing laws and even when they are passed into law, is the lack of enforcement. And so at this point in time, we are going to have to exercise more oversight over these agencies.
10 seconds for your third point.
The third point, we are going to have to exercise oversight over these agencies as well as make sure that we just empower our unions, because union busing has been another one of those agenda items for them. And so the more powerful our unions are, the better that the unions can fight for the actual workers.
Ms. Crockett, thank you very much. Mr. Talarico, same question for Ms. Eliano. What are the 3 things that you would do to support federal employees? You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, and we shouldn't call them federal employees. We should call them what they are, which are public servants. They are signing up to do difficult jobs serving this country. And instead of disrespecting that service, we should honor it. So the 3 things I would do is 1, reverse all of the DOGE cuts and reinstate those employees. 2, make sure that we're raising their wages so they're paid what they're worth. And then 3, make sure that we protect their right to organize and right to collective bargain. And this, I think, is so critical because we're not going to recruit the next generation to enter into these public service roles with this kind of disrespect. And we're seeing it all across the federal government. It has to end. The only way to do that, though, is to win in November and have a Senate majority that will finally hold this executive branch accountable.
Mr. Talarico, thank you very much. We want to switch now to another topic, raising concern for Texans. You all have already touched on it, but let's go ahead and go in depth on skyrocketing healthcare costs.
What do you see as a fix or an alternative to the Affordable Care Act? Mr. Talarico, you have 60 seconds.
Well, I believe healthcare is a human right that shouldn't depend on how much money you make or what zip code you're born into. This is personal for me. I was 28 when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. My first 30-day supply of insulin cost me $684. I couldn't afford that. So I put it on a credit card. That's because Big Pharma has a chokehold on the healthcare system in this country. They have a monopoly on the insulin market. So when I got elected, I took on Big Pharma and their lobbyists, and we passed a $25 insulin copay cap. And then I passed a Bernie Sanders idea through the Texas legislature to import cheaper prescription drugs from Canada right here into Texas. That's the kind of bold leadership we need at the federal level. We have to reverse all the cuts made to the Affordable Care Act, and we have to allow every Texan and every American the chance to join Medicare. I think universal coverage should be a non-negotiable in the wealthiest country in human history.
Ms. Crockett, same question. What do you see as a fix or alternative to the Affordable Care Act? You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, so I am a proud sponsor of Medicare for All. I signed on to Medicare for All my first term. I'm currently a sponsor of it. I also signed on to a bill that Lloyd Doggett has. It's called the Care Now Act. And what this would do is force a state like Texas to end up expanding Medicaid. We know that in the state of Texas, we lead in uninsured in this country with over 5 million uninsured. What we've not talked about enough is how many Texans are actually on the Affordable Care Act and how they are impacted by these tax subsidies that were rolled back or allowed to expire in January. I was proud to say that while the Democrats are in the minority, we were able to go ahead and force through a vote in the House on extending those tax subsidies for 3 years. But that's basically a Band-Aid. And frankly, we were able to get that out of the House, but we are still waiting on the Senate to act. I think that this is about making sure that people understand that they want us to be pitted against one another. They want us to believe that there's not enough money to do it all. But the reality is that our budget is about our priorities. We have a multi-trillion-dollar budget. And so if we truly believe that everyone should have access to healthcare, we can make that a reality with bold leadership.
All right, we want to hear from another union member who has a question for the candidates.
Trevor Haas is based in Dallas. He is the District 2 board member of the Texas State Association of Letter Carriers with the National Association of Letter Carriers. Here's his question.
Extreme heat poses serious safety risks for many workers, particularly in Texas. My union brother, Eugene Gates Jr., collapsed while delivering the mail and passed away. What will you do, if elected, to help pass meaningful federal legislation to require rest breaks and heat safety protections?
Ms. Crockett, we'll begin with you. How would you help pass federal legislation to require rest breaks and heat safety protections for workers? You have 60 seconds.
I've been working specifically tirelessly on this particular issue. Eugene Gates was my constituent. And I would just say that I've worked tirelessly, and thank you so much to the Letter Carriers Union, because they jumped to it very quickly to make sure that I had as much information as I needed in that moment to make sure that we could hopefully prevent immediately another unnecessary death of another letter carrier. So ultimately, I worked with the local. We made sure that some of the things that they were not allowing them to do that historically they had allowed for, say, such as starting their routes earlier, making sure that they had some water breaks, making sure if people needed to work once the sun went down, that we immediately got to that. We also know that DeJoy, I made demands on getting DeJoy in front of the oversight committee so that I could demand answers of him. I then have followed up and sent him other letters, as well as worked with Congressman Kassar specifically on worker protections around heat issues and just environmental issues that workers not just at the post office face. But the last point I'll make about the post office is that we had funded the trucks to make sure that they had AC. And so I was focusing on making sure that there was a priority in getting those trucks to Texas and other states where they experience the extreme heat.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ms. Crockett. All right, Mr. Talarico, 60 seconds to answer the same question. How would you help pass federal legislation to require rest breaks and heat safety protections for workers?
Well, I want to give a wonky answer. We should abolish the filibuster in the U.S. Senate so that we can actually pass these kinds of bold pieces of legislation that are going to protect the rights of workers. Again, always look at our records, because at the state level, I fought tooth and nail against the Death Star bill that robbed workers of their ability to have basic water breaks in the extreme heat. And so that's exactly what we got to do at the federal level. Workers are under attack. And by the way, these Republican extremists who are pushing these kind of bills claim to be devout Christians. But if you read Matthew 25, Jesus tells his followers, "Depart from me, for I was thirsty, and you refused to give me a drink." To see these kind of self-righteous Republicans rob people of the opportunity to get a drink of water when we have 100-degree heat, to me is not only unchristian, it is immoral, it is repugnant, and we need leaders in the U.S. Senate who are going to call it out.
All right, you mentioned the filibuster. We plan to talk about that later in the debate. Let's go ahead and talk about it now. Ms. Crockett, your thoughts on abolishing the filibuster?
Yeah, we've got to do something. Again, they make excuses for everything that they want to make excuses for. When we look at the big ugly bill that was passed in reconciliation, that is a filibuster carve out. The reason that we are experiencing the redistricting throughout the country right now is because when we broke quorum in 2021 and Nancy Pelosi was able to pass the Freedom to Vote Act as well as the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, they were held up because of the filibuster in the Senate. I don't understand what is more important than making sure that people have access to the democracy, have access to representation. And right now we're holding our breath to see whether or not the Supreme Court is going to fully gut what is currently left of the Voting Rights Act. And so I think that for very fundamental things, we definitely have to start there. Law. I'm happy to say that in May of 2024, I signed on to a letter that was led by Representative Jayapal. That letter actually went to President Biden. It was specifically on this issue and saying, President Biden, you don't need to authorize further munitions at this moment because there is evidence that there are problems and therefore there are violations of international law.
Mr. Talarico, same question. What conditions, if any, should be placed on U.S. military aid to Israel? You have 60 seconds.
As an educator who has fought for children, seeing what's happening in Gaza makes me sick to my stomach. I quoted a theologian the other day who said, "I screamed at God for the starving children until I realized the starving children was God screaming at me." God is screaming at all of us in Gaza as we speak. Yes, Israel has a right to defend its people, certainly after October 7th, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu does not have the right to wage war against civilians. He does not have the right to restrict aid. He does not have the right to use famine or collective punishment as tactics in that effort. And so I have said that if I'm in the United States Senate, I will use every bit of this country's financial and diplomatic leverage to end the death and destruction in Gaza, which means banning offensive weapons to the Netanyahu government and ensuring that we have candidates all across this country who are going to speak the truth about this issue. And I have done that repeatedly. I would not vote to Benjamin Netanyahu that he is currently using to slaughter children in Gaza.
Let's stick with foreign policy. Ms. Crockett, you have publicly criticized the U.S. military operation in Venezuela and the capture of Nicolas Maduro. In 30 seconds, do you think the president needs congressional approval before taking military action against a foreign country?
Absolutely. We had a briefing on this issue. I was not satisfied with that briefing. At the end of the day, this president is seemingly trying to plunge us not only into a civil war with ICE, but he's also trying to plunge us into World War III. And he's not trying to stop at Venezuela, which is why we must have a check on him, because he is threatening Greenland. He has decided that he wanted to threaten Cuba, and he's talking about going after Mexico, which happens to be our largest trade partner. He is consistent. We don't stop him. I am afraid about how many other folk are going to be trying to come and come after us. We have to stop him in this moment.
All right, Mr. Talarico, you've also criticized the current administration's military action in Venezuela. 30 seconds for the same question. Do you think the president needs congressional approval before taking military action against a foreign country?
Absolutely. We have to confront this new American imperialism seeking to colonize Venezuela and Greenland. And I said in the beginning of this debate that I don't see politics as left versus right. I see it as top versus bottom. This intervention in Venezuela is not only reckless, it is deeply corrupt. Trump promised the biggest oil executives in this country a, quote, great deal if they gave him $1 billion for his reelection campaign. And then he turned around and gave them a gift. He gave them the nation of Venezuela, home to the largest oil reserves in the world. So we have to call out this kind of corruption. Billionaires don't just run our economy, they don't just run our government, now they run our foreign policy. We need a senator who's going to stand up to those billionaires in Washington, D.C.
Staying with you, Mr. Talarico, with regard to Iran now, if military action is taken without congressional approval when it comes to Iran, how should the Senate hold the administration accountable? You have 60 seconds for this one.
Right now, we have a Senate that is not holding the executive branch accountable. We don't have checks and balances in our government anymore. And that has to end because, as we've seen, the administration is not going to come to Congress for congressional approval for military action, a blatant violation of our laws, of our Constitution. And we can have discussions about how to respond in Iran, where we have seen so many innocent civilians, protesters murdered on their streets. We're also seeing that in Minnesota as we speak. And so that conversation needs to be had out in public, and it needs to be a decision made by the people's representatives, not a rogue administrative state.
Same question for you, Ms. Crockett. You'll also have 60 seconds with regards to Iran. If military action is taken without congressional approval, how should the Senate hold the administration accountable?
Yeah, so, for 2 seconds, I had a glimmer of hope when it came to the Senate as it relates to Venezuela specifically, because there was a war powers resolution that they put on the floor, and we had the votes. There were Republicans that
Senate hold the administration accountable?
Yeah, so, for 2 seconds, I had a glimmer of hope when it came to the Senate as it relates to Venezuela specifically, because there was a war powers resolution that they put on the floor, and we had the votes. There were Republicans that said this is wrong. After all the briefings, they understood that to allow for this permission structure would only allow for him to do the things that he's been doing now, which is to continue to bully people. And so as they voted on the war powers resolution, they received a phone call from the White House saying you need to change your votes. And so people changed their votes. And so first step that we've got to do is we've got to actually get to the majority. That is why this Texas seat matters. This is actually bigger than Texas. This is about our democracy and this country right now. This seat has to flip if we are going to make these changes. So we've got to make sure that we've got the numbers. But also, we got to talk to those Republicans that feel like the Republican Party has just left them, such as the Thomas Masseys of the world, who will always stand up and do what he truly believes in. There are still a few senators like a Tom Tillis who are left in the U.S. Senate. We've got to decide that we are going to band together with whichever Republicans have decided that they actually want to honor their oath to the Constitution.
All right, let's get back to some domestic topics. Ms. Crockett, you have said you would absolutely at least support an impeachment inquiry into Donald Trump if he engaged in misconduct. Under what specific circumstances, if any, would you support impeachment or an impeachment inquiry? And where do you draw the line? You have 60 seconds.
So I want to be clear about this. The statement he just made was from a while ago, before things got as bad as they are right now. I think that there is more than enough to impeach Donald Trump, period, on the face of it. In fact, Al Green has put on the floor more than once impeachment resolutions, and I have voted for them. Now, ultimately, do I think that we should go through the formal process so that we can do all of the data collection that we need to do so that we can have all of the evidence? Absolutely, because basically it is a prosecution. And so we need to make sure that people are actually honoring those subpoenas. We need to get all of the information. And so I think that we should start at an impeachment inquiry. We should go and get all of the information. We should allow the American people to hear and see that information, call their representatives, urge them to make the votes. And then ultimately, if we feel like there's enough evidence that has been presented in committee, which it most likely would be judiciary where I currently serve, then we take that vote. We take it to the entire House floor. Now, there are those that say there is no point because we impeached him twice and then he ultimately did not get convicted. Is that where you're going?
Ms. Crockett, but name one thing specifically that he should be impeached for.
I think that he should be impeached as it relates to his unlawful use of the tariffs. That's a very easy one. He doesn't have the legal authority to do it. He, everything else as it relates to his legal authority, I think the courts have stopped him, whether we're talking about birthright citizenship and some others, but the courts have not yet weighed in specifically on the impeachments. The tariffs.
All right. Mr. Talarico, while you have been critical of Donald Trump, you have not publicly called for impeachment. If elected to the Senate, under what specific circumstances, if any, would you support impeachment or an impeachment inquiry? And where do you draw the line? You have 60 seconds.
I think the administration has certainly committed impeachable offenses, particularly when it comes to using their public roles to enrich themselves. I will conduct myself in any impeachment proceedings in the United States Senate, just as I did in the Texas legislature when impeachment charges were brought against our corrupt Attorney General. I evaluated all the evidence. I said it was the most serious vote I ever casted because I was removing a duly elected public official from office. The person who I voted to impeach is now running for this Senate seat on the other side of the aisle. And it should underscore the importance of stopping a Senator Ken Paxton, maybe the most corrupt politician in America, and that's saying something. So to answer your question, Gromer, people can look at how I conducted myself in those impeachment proceedings. I will pour through the evidence. I will treat it with the utmost seriousness, and I will vote my conscience, and I will do my duty.
And I believe I heard you say something about enriching himself financially, but be specific. What's one thing you would vote to impeach?
Gromer, I'm not going to articulate articles of impeachment here at a political debate, but if those charges are brought in the U.S. House and they come before the U.S. Senate, I will carefully evaluate them. I will weigh the evidence, and I will do my duty as a U.S. Senator.
All right, let's talk about the U.S. Supreme Court now. Ms. Crockett, you have co-sponsored legislation to expand the Supreme Court. You argue that the court has been politicized and no longer reflects democratic accountability. In 60 seconds, what specifically led you to that position?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Just to give a little bit of history on the expansion of the court. The court has been expanded a total of 7 times in the history of this country. The last time that this court was expanded was 150 years ago. Our country has actually expanded a little bit faster than the court has. So that's number one. We also know, because of the games that were played in the United States Senate, we know that all 3 of these justices that he got to appoint, he shouldn't have gotten 3 appointments. We also know that we have seen continuous conflicts of interest, and yet they are not removing themselves from those cases. We've seen, whether we're talking about Clarence Thomas or others, them continuing to preside over those cases. And so along with expanding the court, I think that we have to look at the other things that I've worked on as a member of the Supreme Court Task Force. We have to look at making sure that there's a term limit so that hopefully our Supreme Court justices can keep up with the times of the people and what is going on in our country. We also need to make sure that there is some type of ethics that this court has to abide by, because unfortunately, this is the only court in the land that does not have a rule of ethics, and there is only one body that oversees the courts, and that is the United States Senate.
Mr. Talarico, the Supreme Court, you've spoken about restoring trust in institutions and the rule of law, but you have not publicly endorsed expanding the Supreme Court. You'll have 60 seconds for this. If elected to the Senate, would you vote to expand the court, and why or why not?
I've rolled out a comprehensive anti-corruption package, which includes overhauling the Supreme Court. I'm open to court expansion proposals. I think term limits for Supreme Court justices can do just as much good to reduce the partisanship when it comes to these vacancies and help to have more evenly distributed appointments across administrations. And I agree with the Congresswoman that we have to have a basic code of ethics applied to the court, because we have seen that billionaires don't just buy members of the executive branch, including the President of the United States. They don't just buy members of Congress in the House and the Senate. They also buy Supreme Court justices. So if we're going to be serious about tackling corruption, it needs to apply to all three branches of government. And I encourage folks to check out my comprehensive anti-corruption package, which we detail on our website.
And just to be clear, you said that you're open to expanding the court, but you're not committing to voting yes on expanding?
It depends on the proposal. I think what people know, based on my time in the legislature, is I'm a policy wonk. And I know in these kind of back and forth with media, they want a yes or no answer. It depends on what's in the bill, but I'm very open to court expansion proposals.
All right, let's talk about campaign finance. Mr. Talarico, you have criticized the political influence of billionaire mega donors. Records show you accepted money from Texas Sands PAC, which lobbies for expanded casino gambling and is backed by billionaire Miriam Adelson. Can you explain the exception that was made there? You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I've never taken a contribution from Miriam Adelson, never met her, don't know her, don't plan to meet her. But I do support legalized gambling in Texas. I think it's good public policy. I think it'll bring good jobs. I think it'll bring desperately needed tax revenue into our Texas public schools. We rank 43rd in the nation in per student education funding. And I think we're losing business to Louisiana and Oklahoma. That business can be brought back here to Texas to help fund our Texas public schools.
All right. Ms. Crockett, campaign finance records show you have from PACs and companies like Lockheed Martin, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and JP Morgan. In 60 seconds, how do you keep corporate donations from influencing your vote?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you brought up the corporate PAC money on the state level. Unfortunately, on the state level, there are no limits. On the federal level, there are limits. And I know that you specifically pointed to Miriam Adelson because she's the person who allegedly is tied into this PAC. And I just want to say that, number one, we have actual limits. So our limits have been $5,000. Number two, that money has not come from an individual, especially someone who is believing that Trump should have a third term. Instead, this money has come from the employees. Number four, you know, you didn't bring it up, but Goldman Sachs, which is located in my district, a number of these companies have an actual blueprint in Texas 30, and their workers wanted to make sure, because they are taking $5, $10 out of their checks, that they had access. But I do want to be clear. I want to win. And so at the end of the day, what I've done with that money is I've donated almost $600,000 just in my freshman term to make sure that down ballot candidates could win throughout this entire country. And I'm committed to making sure that no vote that I ever take has anything to do with somebody giving me a check.
Mr. Talarico, do you want to respond? Miriam Adelson is a billionaire. She does run the Sands PAC. You want to respond to what Ms. Crockett just said?
Like I said, I don't know Miriam Adelson. It sounds like she and I disagree on almost every issue, but we do agree on legalizing gambling in Texas. And as I've outlined before, why that is good public policy. And so again, I think what we need to do is ban corporate PACs in this country. I think we need to ban super PACs, which is how billionaires fund our campaigns with secret, unlimited donations. And we got to go further. We've got to ban members of Congress from trading stocks and enriching themselves while they're in public office.
I'll say, Ms. Crockett, a follow-up question on this topic. You have 30 seconds. In polls, voters across Texas have voiced frustration with what they see as corruption and special interest influence in Washington. You are in Congress now, so how would you respond to voters who believe the system is rigged?
I agree. I mean, I'm running for the United States Senate because I think that it's time for us to do our best to try to unrig this system. Listen, I'm not a likely story. I didn't come from a family where everybody thought that I was going to end up in politics. And frankly, as I started this off, I said that I hate politics. At the end of the day, we need to do things like you were talking about the enrichment issue as it relates to Donald Trump. Donald Trump has enriched himself to the tune of $1.4 billion since he has been in office in violation of the emoluments clause of the United States Constitution. That's just in this term.
All right, we're tight on time.
I
Let's move
see.
to Mr. Talarico. A 30-second follow-up question for you. You've touched on themes of moral leadership and restoring accountability and trust in government. If elected to the Senate, what specific anti-corruption measures would you prioritize, and how would they be different from what Washington has already promised but failed to deliver?
Well, I've already outlined some of them: banning corporate PACs, banning super PACs, and banning members of Congress from trading stocks. I also think we need to ban forms of corruption that don't involve money. I think we need a national ban on gerrymandering across every state in this country. I think we need to overhaul the Supreme Court, which we talked about earlier. I think we need to pass term limits so people aren't making a career out of public service. And I think we can, through federal statute, that every member of Congress hold at least one annual town hall in their districts so their constituents can hold them accountable. That's the kind of anti-corruption package that can restore people's faith in this system.
All right, thank you very much. Those are our questions, but the debate's not over yet because we want to move to closing statements. Mr. Talarico, you have 60 seconds.
Well, thank you again to the AFL-CIO, and thank you to my friend Congresswoman Crockett for being here. And I just want to thank you all for being committed to politics of our state. I got into this because of my students. I got into the classroom in the fall of 2011, right after the state legislature cut $5 billion from our schools. I had 45 kids in one classroom. There weren't enough desks for all those kids, so I had students sitting on the air conditioning unit. It's unacceptable. And that's why I ran for the state legislature. It's why I flipped a Trump district that no one thought was winnable by bringing people together to change this broken, corrupt political system. And that's exactly what we can do in this race in November. We have a moral imperative to win. And I know all of you are committed to that cause.
Crockett, 60 seconds for your closing statement.
One of the things that you said just a minute ago is a lot of people feel as if the system is rigged. As someone who has seen up close and personal how badly things are working in DC, I have been fighting on the front lines in this corrupt administration. I am willing to take the chances that frankly most are not willing to take. I unfortunately have law enforcement that has to be with me all the time because of the death threats. I'm not telling you that so that you can send me your prayers. I'm telling you that because whoever goes to the United States Senate is going to have to be ready for real war. This is how bad it is. As I was traveling to East Texas last weekend, we received a phone call of a woman whose house they were having to go to because that particular woman had stated over and over and over that she was about to come and kill me. I am here to tell you that it is life or death as we see what is happening in Minnesota and otherwise.
All right, that concludes our debate. We want to thank the candidates for participating. We want to thank the Texas AFL-CIO for hosting. And we want to thank you for joining us.
We appreciate you spending the afternoon with us. From all of us here, thank you for watching.
Put a one in the chat. Can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure you guys can hear me. Because I don't have my camera connected, so I just want to make sure the microphone at least works. Okay, good. Before we start, I just want to say thank you. Shout out to these people. Shout out to Beautiful. Thank you. Happy 12 months, by the way. Shout out to B-Win. Thank you so much. Shout out to Sirius. Thank you. I appreciate that. Shout out to Mr. Nobody. All right. So my thoughts real quick on this. So let me just say this off top. If it's either one of them, I wouldn't mind. I definitely think in this debate, Jasmine Crockett won. If I had to choose a winner, I would definitely say Jasmine Crockett. Notice Jasmine Crockett was able to say this is what I have done compared to James Talarico. This is what I want to do or will do. You know, and it's no fault to him. It's just that Jasmine Crockett is actually at a federal level compared to a state level. And I think also, too, I would have liked hearing more of what he has done on a state level for the people. Because even with him, you know, only being in a state level, I didn't really hear too much of like what he has done for the people. Where compared to Jasmine Crockett, just like the worker who unfortunately had passed away, the mail delivery guy, she was able to say, like, you know, I was able to get AC installed in the trucks now. That was very important. So, yes, she wants to do more, but also she has also talked about what she has done. James Talarico is more like, okay, this is what I want to do when I get in there. When he said the filibuster, I agree. For those of you who don't know, some votes have to go through a filibuster, so that means it needs the 60 votes to pass in the Senate. That's why when Democrats or Republicans have the majority, some of the votes, they can't pass through certain bills because they need that 60. So again, getting rid of that filibuster, but only if the Democrats get in power. Don't get rid of it now. But that's the other thing, too. If they get rid of the filibuster, then the Republicans, when they get into office, that's why people are worried about it. But again, I mean, what's stopping the Republicans from doing it right now? So you never really know, right? Something else that I thought was interesting in this whole debate was that the timing. I don't know if typically the presidential debates are given 60 seconds. I feel like they're given like at least like 90 seconds, like a minute and a minute and a half. But 60 seconds, it just seemed very short. Jasmine Crockett, for her, I think she needed to shorten her answers a little bit and get to the point because, again, there's even her opening statement, which you guys didn't see here because I was trying to find the live stream, but her opening statement, she got cut off from that. And it's kind of like, well, damn, the opening is very important. And even her final statement, she got cut off too. So I think her shortening her answers, but I don't know if there's going to be another debate or not. Well, for the Democratic ticket or nominee, I don't think there'll be another debate. Obviously, there will be coming in, sometime around later this year. So again, her answers do need to be a little shorter and straight to the point. But again, the reason why she's explaining so much is because she's actually in the fight. Compared to James Talarico, he's not in the fight right now. Like, I actually don't know what he has done. And that's why I was all like, as a state senator, I feel like he should have focused on that, like explaining what he has done as a state senator. I mean, I think if we show up, Jazz will get it. Yes, definitely. Either one of them show up. Let me just say that. I'm not going to be a hater, even though they've been hating on Jasmine Crockett. I'm not going to be a hater and say don't vote for James. It's that timer. They need longer timer. Yes, I agree. But these folks are haters. What's up, Blessing? How you doing? They're not going to get rid of the filibuster. Both sides use it to make sure the people don't get what they want if it's to detriment of the corporate America. Yes, exactly. She seems a little nervous. Yeah. I actually don't know if Jasmine Crockett ever has done a debate, actually. I feel like James always answers like that. And I want to say something too. The whole Miriam Elderson thing, him saying, I never met her, I don't know her, I don't want to know her. So like, no, you do know her. Like you do, because you took $50,000 from her. I think it was like 57,000. It was over 50,000. I remember that. But him pretending like he didn't know the lady, I'm like, ugh, come on now. Really? Like, he should have said, yes, I did. At the time, it was different, you know, because he did talk about the gambling thing. I know her family wants to bring gambling specifically into Dallas. I believe that's what it was. They want to bring it into Dallas because there's no gambling in Texas. That's why when I go there, you guys always hear me talk about going to Oklahoma because there's no gambling in Texas. So they want to bring a casino there. You know, again, I know that's kind of controversial because they're all like, okay, you're going to have people gambling, addiction, and but I think also too, using the money to fund for education, I don't mind that. So, but again, he fumbled over that whole answer about knowing Miriam Eldison, and I'm like, and mind you, those crazy leftists online, they've been bashing Jasmine Crockett, talking about that she, you know, taking money from AIPAC and she works for Israel and all this other shit. But when it comes to James Talarico, they completely ignore it. Like there's been a photo that came out that he was actually at an AIPAC event in 2019. But they won't talk about that, right? But again, I believe that you have two different candidates. One is trying to get there. One is already there, just going for a different or a higher position, I should say. But, you know, either way, I think that it was what I did like. One thing that I do want to point out is that they didn't necessarily attack each other. Like they didn't say like, oh, this person's dumb, or, you know, they didn't go with the insults. They kept it focused on what they wanted to do in their platform. Because definitely, I think them throwing shots at each other, that would just be bad, considering that, you know, whoever wins, you have to get behind the other person. Oh, another thing that I want to point out about Jasmine Crockett that I thought was good was that she explained the whole PAC thing, the corporate PAC, and talking about money. And, you know, the PACs are, it's a give and take, because I understand taking money for corporations, you don't want that. However, the way that she explained it, like, you know, these are actually employees of these businesses wanting to donate because these companies are in my area. I was like, oh, okay, I can definitely get that, you know, because it is. I don't like, for me, taking corporate PAC money. It's not a how do I put this? I don't want to say I don't care, but fuck it, I don't care. I don't care. Sorry, I don't care. I don't care if they're taking corporate PAC money, as long as they are doing their job and, you know, with the salute. Because here's the thing: the Democrats now, they want to stand on don't take corporate PAC money or whatever, right? But the Republicans, what are they doing? Taking corporate PAC money. So you better take the money, because you need to fight fire with fire. I do think, you know, definitely down the line, we need to get corporate PAC money out of politics. I definitely agree with that. But as of right now, I can't, you know, that's not a hard line for me. I'm gonna even go one step further that might get me canceled. AIPAC is not a hard line for me. And you know why? Because the average day voter does not even know what AIPAC is. The average voter does not know what AIPAC is. There's certain things that online or people who are very involved in politics understand, but the average day voter, they don't really understand the whole AIPAC Israel thing. They don't get it. Putting food on the table, that's what they understand. Getting better wages, healthcare, you know, those are the things that they understand. Now, again, do I like that we give money to Israel, especially for them to keep dropping bombs in Gaza? No, I do not like that. I do not like that at all. I will never be for that. However, you know, it is a give and take. And let's be honest about something. People are fooled thinking that Trump got a deal between Gaza and Israel, like he has some kind of peace deal. No, they're still dropping bombs on those people, you guys. 3 journalists was just killed earlier this week. So they're still killing people over there in Gaza or Palestine. Now, do we need stricter laws on Israel, you know, as far as funding and what they're actually giving them funding for? Yes, definitely. But considering that Jasmine Crockett is not taking AIPAC, again, the average voter in Texas does not care about anything about AIPAC. I'm talking about the average voter, not the people that are online. You know, like me and you. I'm talking about the average voter. They don't care about that. That's a certain fringe of the internet that cares about that. Like, you know, if you take anything from AIPAC or anything related to Israel or Jews, they cancel you automatically. But the average day worker, they're not tripping about that. Because let me tell you, the Republicans, I don't hear the Republicans talking about, oh, if you take AIPAC, I'm not going to be on your... No, they don't care about that. They care about what's affecting them right now. Right. And I'm going to do a separate video on that regarding the ICE killing that happened today. It's literally state-run terrorism now at this point. And you know, also too, thank you for bringing up ICE, because James Talarico, he kind of skirted around that answer where Jasmine Crockett said, you know, whatever that looks like, I support it. But with James, he was all like, oh, well, you even with the impeachment question, he was like, well, I'm not going to get down to what, you know, the articles of impeachment. I don't think he actually knows what the articles are. But, you know, I expected more like, yes, abolish ICE, or yes, I'm for impeachment. Like those kind of things I figured like would be a yes, like not questionable. And especially because James Talarico is supposed to represent the progressive far left compared to Jasmine Crockett, but Jasmine Crockett seems more progressive in her thoughts and her policies. So again, people got to see it for themselves, and now they get to make the decision on who they support, who they're going to vote for. So again, Texas, y'all got a job to do in March. Let me get the date. Hold on. No, that's when the first day of early voting is April. No, that's not it. The hell? March 3rd. March 3rd. March 3rd is the Democratic primary. So you guys have a job to do on March 3rd. Get your ass out and vote. Again, if it's James Talarico, we're going to have a James Talarico shirt on. If it's Jasmine Crockett, we're going to have our Jasmine Crockett shirt on. We're going to support both candidates, and we're going to flip Texas. I wish, you know, it was Ted Cruz trip. You know, Ted Cruz came to California. He's here right now in Laguna Beach. Like y'all said earlier, I knew it was California, but somebody in the chat said it was specifically Laguna Beach. But again, there's a storm. Also, you guys be safe out there with the storm. My sister said, you know, she was fine. She was okay in her area. So I don't know where you guys are located in Texas, but I know the South, all of that, you guys are being hit with that storm. So please be careful. I'm just happy when, you know, after this whole Democratic primary in Texas is over with, because then we can move on to Colorado. We can move on to Alaska. Alaska has 2 Republicans in the Senate seat. There's a lady by the name of Mary Patola, who is currently polling ahead of the Republican in that area. or in that Senate seat. So that's an important, an important one to focus on. So yeah, there's so many different races. Hell, there's a governor race here in California, and I'm trying to figure out when that debate is going to be, because I know we're voting soon. So please check your local area when, you know, the primaries are coming up. Primaries are important. This is where you get to choose which candidate you want to run. Don't complain about, oh, I don't like none of these candidates. Well, hell, you should have voted in the primary, damn it. Water lines are shut off. Oh, the water lines are shut off? Damn. Crazy. Yeah, y'all be safe out there. All right, you guys, I will be back later because definitely I want to talk about the situation. ICE. Also, Liam Ramos, the 5-year-old. Yeah, it's too much going on right now. I love y'all. Be safe. We